Well, would you look at that? We're back to B-roll footage. Are you happy? Jeez, you guys. Anyway, hello everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to one of our weekly Tensura Season 2 discussion videos. Today we're here to talk all about episode 22, Demon Lord's Banquet, Walpurgis. But before we get into the video proper, quick reminder if you haven't done so yet, to hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, set notifications to all, let all of AndyTube know that you're here. And without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and jump right into this thing, shall we? So, how about that episode? I'm not gonna lie, this episode was like legitimately very fun. I had a really good time with this week's episode. Again, I've said this before in other videos. I don't know if I've necessarily said it in a Tensura video, but I will say it again. This season is literally being carried by Slime and Hamefura. The isekais are like carrying this season big time. It's mostly on Hamefura's shoulders, but Tensura is no slouch. Like, Slime is very much like, I can carry this entire season on my back, right? Like, just literally, it's that. It's either Slime is either carrying the entire season on its back, or it's like Gimli or Hamefura and Tensura are Gimli and Aragorn at Helm's Deep. Like, you'll have to toss me. Slime is like, you'll have to toss me. So that's who Slime is right now. Slime is either carrying the season. Slime is either Aragorn or Gimli, and I'm gonna go with Gimli because Gimli, I think Slime saying you'll have to toss me. Like, the idea of hearing Rimuru say you'll have to toss me to Bakarina is really funny to me. But with that said, this season is this anime season is rough, but this show is still good. Like Slime very much carrying the season on its back. And that comes down to the fact that it's just nailing what it does best, and that is the tricky balance of both discussion and battle. And that is something that I believe that no show really does quite as well as Tensura, and this week is certainly no exception. We get a big, like the big Walpurgis scene where it's essentially the banquet, right? So Clayman does this whole like, oh, welcome to my banquet, in only the way that Koyasu can, right? It's like, oh, hello, blah blah blah. Now we're going to banish this slime away from the demon lords. And it's like, oh my god. Sorry, that's my Clayman impression. Like, oh, Rimuru, you scoundrel. Right, like that's literally what it is, and he basically is just rambling. Right, Clayman is like the evil version of me. Man just rambles endlessly, and most people tune out after a certain point. But Rimuru says something that I was like, oh, thank you, Rimuru, and it's Clayman gave a long speech. Here's a summary. And I was like, oh, thank you, Rimuru, because A, I don't want to hear that long speech, and B, I'm not going to lie, this season of Slime does lean a little more heavily on discussion than battle. And that is not a bad thing, but when you're an adrenaline junkie / battle junkie like I am, I miss my fights. You know, thankfully this episode gives us one hell of a fight. But in the last few episodes have been, quite honestly, like hell of a fight, right? Like we've been taking it to Clayman's forces, and now it's taking it straight to Clayman. So yeah, I have been noticing a distinct lack of battle in this discussion, in this show that's more focused on discussion this season. So I've been like, I miss the battle, and I like that Rimuru's just like, yeah, I'm gonna save you the details. Clayman's an asshole, let's move on. It's like, yes, he is. Why, yes, he is, Rimuru. And, yeah, Clayman's a real dick. I'm sure that I have talked about this already, but Clayman is such an ass, right? Like, he is. So when we see him last week, when he like just decks Milliam for like walking too slow, it's like that level of arrogance is one that you hate to see it. Now, mind you, Koyasu as a Seiyu always nails it with characters like this because he just knows how to bring the right amount of like pomp and arrogance, but also this like sort of like when you hear a Koyasu performance, you love to listen. You know, you're very much like at the edge of your seat because he's so good. You know, he's so good. And I've seen him play like good characters and heroes too. And I will say Koyasu can do it all. Right? I friggin' love Koyasu. But Clayman just he's next level. I'm telling you. Like he is such a scumbag. Like, the way he sort of, like, is framing the events of Season 2, and even, like, to a smaller extent, the events of Season 1, and sort of, like, framing himself as some big hero who's, like, defending himself from the evil monster who came up and decided to become a demon lord, this imposter, which is hilarious considering Clayman's the actual imposter here, but, like the wannabe demon lord. But, you know, Clayman is trying to be like, oh, he's not even, like, he's not worthy of being a demon lord, and blah, blah, blah. And he frames Mulan's death as this, like, big hero moment for himself. Like, my trusted mage Mulan, and he killed her with his bare hands, and her death is on my conscience, and I will swear vengeance on her name. And meanwhile, it's like, this guy treated Mulan like crap, and is now pretending like he was on her side the whole time. Reframes Carrion's death as like, by the way, is Carrion actually dead? Don't actually answer that. Now that I think about it, why am I don't answer that. But I was like, is Carrion actually dead, or is he like just in, or is he just somewhere? I think he might be toast, if I'm honest, because we haven't seen him in a while. But Carrion, he sort of reframes his death, possibly death, I don't know, we'll see, as like Milliam flying off the handle, trying to defend Clayman, right? Like, because they're such good friends. Right? It's like, oh, this, ooh, right? Just like, ooh, this guy. It's so frustrating. And what's hilarious is that no one's buying his crap. Like the giant dude whose name escapes me, who is a boss, by the way, basically calls out Clayman as like, why would he even need Carrion's help if Veldora is seemingly back? Like, let's say that Veldora is actually back. We know that he is, but this is what the giant is saying, right? Where the giant is saying, let's say Veldora is back, right? Let's go out on a limb and say, like, sure, yeah, Veldora's back, right? If he's back, why would he even need Carrion to help him instigate a fight with Falmouth? Like, if that's the case, why would he even need that? Right, so, like, immediately people are just, like, calling Clayman out. And Clayman's like, oh, yes, well, you see, like, just basically goes full, just goes full, like, stuttering, like, right? Like, well, you see, the reason for that is, he's a bad guy, and Rimuru just finally just shuts it down, right? Like, Rimuru this week is, like, a boss. Like, at least during the discussion with, Clayman, where Rimuru's like, okay, I'm going to, like, you have no proof of the things that you're accusing me of, whereas I have proof of the things that you've done. And essentially just snaps his fingers and shows some CCTV footage of Clayman's treachery, right? Like, he shows footage of the different advisors, I suppose. Not advisors, but the different warriors at his discretion. Essentially, like, showing that Clayman's kind of not to be trusted, right? We see, like, the one dude who, like, eats the thing and it kills him. The guy with the ice sword or whatever it was. Is it ice or? It was an ice sword. His design was cool, though. That guy dies, right? And then you see the clowns also saying, like, he was right, we shouldn't have listened to him. And so it's also kind of obvious that there's somebody behind Clayman. So even though Clayman seemed like the ringleader, there's in fact someone else behind Clayman, and Rimuru is now noticing this. But the CCTV footage essentially is just showing that, like, yeah, Clayman's an asshole. Clayman's like, you just made that up. You used magic to conjure these images. And Rimuru's like, look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't come here to listen to your boring ass story. And he then just sort of, first of all, he literally says the words, I didn't come here to listen to your boring ass stories. And I was like, tell him, Rimuru. Tell him, my boy. Right? It was great. So he's just done, right? Like, Rimuru's just done. And then he just, like, deletes the table. Like, the table that they're all sitting at, this man just, like, Rimuru just deletes like he's Mikami. Like, just, pew, just boom, gone, right? And Clayman, like, almost stumbles over, right? Because he was leaning against the table, so he almost stumbles over, but he catches himself. And Dino is still asleep. Dino fell asleep on the table. When the table gets deleted, he hits the ground. This man is still asleep. This man just does not give a single shit. It would have been so funny if when Guy later, like, separates the rest of the Demon Lords from the big fight, if Dino got stuck in there. Like, if he didn't get moved with everyone else, if because he was on the ground, he, like, just ends up still in the sphere and is like, what the hell's happening? Like, just wakes up and everything's going off. That would have been really funny. But actually, you know, speaking of Guy, before we get to the actual action of the episode, before we get into, like, the meaty core, the meaty battle of this week's episode, I do want to talk a little bit more about some discussions that happen in this discussion section of our episode discussion. Take a shot every time I say discussion. You'll be dead by the end of the video. Don't do that, actually, now that I think about it. I don't want to be liable for that. Might be a zombie, but, you know, don't want to do that. But anyway, Guy, or Guy. I suppose it's Guy, but I'm going to say Guy, because he's a guy. You know, he's my guy. Although he's not really my guy, if I'm honest. Guy is, I'll say Guy, because that's how it's pronounced. So, Guy, this man is spinning a lot of excuses, and I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't, like, the biggest fan of Guy this week, or Guy, sorry, dang it. I've been calling him Guy for so long, now I have to adjust and be like, oh, his name is Guy, because in the show they're calling him Guy. So it's like, oh, it's Guy? Okay, I suppose it's French. But so, yeah, so Guy spins a lot of excuses this week, essentially saying, like, oh, yeah, Beretta can't join because attendants aren't permitted in a battle between demon lords, except for the attendants that I let in the battle. Yeah. That made me go like, Guy, what is the difference? Like, that made me go like, what? Like, bruh. Right? Because, like, he basically says, like, okay, so no attendants can be in this battle between demon lords, except for the attendants that I have let battle the other demon, in this fight between demon lords. So it's like, okay, that doesn't make any sense to me, because it's like, okay, like, it's like, oh, like, they joined of their own free will, right? Like, so Milliam joined of her own free will so that she can go, and then they summon their attendants to fight with them, and then that's it. And then so Guy is like, yeah, no, attendants can't fight, except for the ones that I just let fight. It's like, dog, I don't know why, I thought that was, like, really weird. I didn't like that. Like, I suppose he could have meant, like, attendants of demon lords who are not in the fight can't fight. But that's not what he said. He just said attendants are not permitted to fight in a battle between demon lords, right? So it's like, I didn't like that very much. Guy, I'm not gonna lie, Guy is, like, a cool design, right? Like, he has this, like, he's very fiery and red, right? Like, there's a lot of fire and sort of a heat to the character, right? Like, Guy is essentially he feels like he was plucked out of an 80s hairband, right? And that is the vibe he gives, right? Where, like, he's sort of like, he sort of straddles the line of, like, a lot of different vibes. For the most part, he feels like a rocker, right? He feels like a rock star. And you get that from his design. He looks like he's from an 80s hairband. The design is all red, and red, as you know, when it comes to color theory and color design and stuff like that, red is typically associated with, like, courage and fire, and that stands with who Guy is seemingly, who Guy's character seemingly is. But I'm not gonna lie, I don't like this sort of, like, scheming side to him. I was like, nah. Because, like, when Beretta basically says, like, I am serving Lady Rimmerus, but I was made by Rimmerus, so I'd like to fight with Rimmeru. And then he's like, okay, but you have to swear to Rimmerus after this. And she's like, yeah. And then he asks, like, who are you? like, what is your lineage? And she's like, I'm a greater demon. And it's like, oh, yeah, forgot about that. And Guy is like, I forgot that there's demons in this show. So I was like, oh, greater demon. I totally forgot that they were in this show. Forgot about my boy Diablo. I don't even know how I did that. And then that's when Guy reveals that he actually knows Noir/Diablo. And is like, what are you scheming, right? Like, so Guy is like, what are you planning? Like, the fact that there's there's greater demons who have Rimmeru's back, like, I'm gonna need to keep an eye on this guy. So I thought that was kind of cool. But I was sort of, like, unimpressed with that side of Guy. And so I'm going to choose to ignore that scene and constantly think of Guy as the cool 80s hairband guy who is probably a badass, but we haven't really seen him fight yet. Although I assume he is badass. But speaking of fighting, that leads us very, very nicely into the big battle this week, which is Clayman and Milium versus Rimuru and their attendants, even though attendants aren't allowed to fight. But again, I'm going to ignore that. But the big fight between Clayman and Rimuru. And essentially Clayman is like, he tells them like, okay, so if you guys don't want to just discuss your differences, instead we're just going to have you fight. So Rimuru, if you could beat Clayman, I will recognize you as a proper demon lord. Clayman, if you beat Rimuru, vice versa, right? Like, so just fight, essentially. Like, enough talk now, fight now, right? Let the gods decide your fate. It shall be a trial by combat. And so Clayman decides to cowardly call upon Milium, because Clayman is about as strong as a pile of leaves. So he calls upon Clayman. And why do he calls upon Milium? He is Clayman. Excuse me. Jeez. My brain is about as mush as Shion makes Clayman's face. And I say that because Shion, like, when Rimuru says, like, okay, then I'm calling on, then I need the help of, I need some help if I'm going to do this by myself, if I'm going to fight these two by myself. And that's when Shion just, like, jumps in and whoopeth the ass of Clayman. Just like, I'm talking, like, just an aura barrage, the likes of which that would make even Star Platinum blush. Like, it is vicious, and like whoops the living hell out of Clayman. Just destroys him, just takes him to prom, drops him off, don't even pay, just to quote Olin Rogers. It was vicious. It was a vicious beatdown, and oh, it was satisfying. It was very satisfying to see Clayman get his rightful due. See this man get the absolute living hell knocked out of him, because rightfully so. Clayman's such an asshole. But so to see Shion show up and just whoopeth some ass, it was great. And I loved seeing her, sort of like stand in like the fighting pose, and she's like, Rimuru, can I help? And Rimuru's like, normally people ask first before just kicking the shit out of somebody, but yes, of course. And Shion's my girl. Like, Shion's the best. I don't know anybody who doesn't like Shion. Like, Shion is just the absolute queen. So it was cool to see Shion sort of jump in to save Rimuru. And Ranga, too. Like, Ranga's there as well. Like, Ranga jumps in. And then that's when Clayman's like, okay, well, if you're going to call in your people, I'm going to call in my people. Right? So then it just keeps getting bigger, right? Like, so Clayman calls on, like, his version of Ranga, which is, like, the fox. And then that summons out two other creatures. I think one's a bunny and one's, like... I think one is supposed to be like a nod to Sun Wukong, like the Monkey King. Like, that's kind of what it looked like, because it has like the staff, and he was like a furry dude. So I was like, this is supposed to be a Sun Wukong reference. That's kind of cool. And then he has like a sort of like machine partner thing, who sort of makes me think of Beretta a little bit. But yeah, so essentially, Rimuru tried to even the odds. Clayman's like, nope, and still gets one extra person to Rimuru's group, because Ranga also summoned some doggos as well. So it's pretty much, it was supposed to be an even fight, then it was an uneven fight, then it became an even fight, then it became uneven again. Because, Clayman. And Clayman immediately is just like, alright, Milium, take him out, because Clayman knows he ain't gonna fight Rimuru and win, right? So he sends Milium after Rimuru, and it is scary. Like, Milium and her, like, thought acceleration, Milium and her abilities actually overpower thought acceleration, which is crazy when you keep in mind that thought acceleration is essentially Ultra Instinct. So that's intimidating. But can she beat Goku, though? That's the question. Can Milium beat Goku? My guess? No. But I would love to see that. I would love to see that. Because, like, she literally moves so fast that thought acceleration almost can't keep up. And it's essentially Ultra Instinct. So it's like, dang, that's kind of impressive. And the fight is pretty brutal. Because essentially what ends up happening is that, like, Rimuru and the gang need to buy time for Raphael to use appraisal on Milium. And then this leads to straight up pandemonium inside the little sphere, right? Because Guy sort of like creates this little circle around them so they can't get out. So it's like a little arena that they can't leave until somebody's dead. So this causes like straight up pandemonium. And it's like everybody's fighting everybody. It's getting crazy. Like Shion versus Clayman and his like little clockwork guy. Later getting help from Beretta. You get Milliam versus Rimuru, and then you get Ranga and his squad versus the Fox and that squad, and it's just crazy, right? Like you see it from the outside, and it's just like lights just popping off. Like it's a crazy fight, right? And eventually, like Rimuru is like sort of on the ropes, and he's like getting his ass kicked, and eventually he gets a second to sort of breathe, and that's when he gets Raphael to use appraisal, and there is no spell being used. So to me, if I was Rimuru, I'd be like, okay, so there's no spell. Maybe it's just maybe, it's the big creepy purple ominous necklace around her neck that I haven't seen her wear before. But nah. Rimuru's like, I don't understand what's happening. And I do feel like maybe Raphael was about to tell him, like, maybe it's the friggin' necklace, you complete dunce. But yeah, nah. Like, it's, Rimuru just doesn't notice or seems to really, like, if you took 5 seconds to think about it, right? Like, if you're like, okay, there's no spell, and you look at Milliam, your friend, who is wearing the same clothes that she always does, except for this ominous purple necklace. My guess is that it's the friggin' necklace, right? Like, maybe that's a me thing. I don't know. But my guess would have immediately been like, it's the friggin' necklace. And so I was sitting there like, Rimuru is the necklace, my guy. And so Rimuru is like, well, maybe I can use Beelzebub to sort of like sap the spell out of her then. It's like, it's not a spell, right? Like, just like, god damn it. And this almost gets him killed until Veldora shows up for the last second save. And I was very happy to see my boy, right? Like, I was super excited to see my dude, but it was definitely a moment of like, oh shit! Like, I thought Rimuru was done. Like, I was like, that's not good. Like, not dead, but I thought this was gonna be a KO. I was like, ooh, no. And then, yeah, Veldora to the freaking rescue. Last second save from the GOAT himself. And, yeah, that was pretty much the episode. My guess is that we're gonna see Veldora versus Milliam next week, because she like really like hauled off and was gonna hit Rimuru with an attack hard enough to probably kill him, and Veldora just tanks it to the back of the head. Like, he's in pain, you know, but he's like, because he's like, you hear him go like, ah, what the hell, right? Like, he like crouches over in pain, like, but it wasn't enough to kill him. Just sort of like, it'd be like if you took a really hard hit to the back of the head. Right, he's like, ow! Right? Like, just enough to cause him pain. Milliam is tough as nails, though, man. So I think that fight's going to be very, very interesting. But yes, that is all my thoughts on this week's episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm going to end the video here. Okay. Cut to the end screen. And there you have it, everyone. That is this week's video, so I certainly hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to boop that up snoot and share if you care. And of course, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you would like to see more content from yours truly. And before we go, as always, I have to give a big, big thank you to my wonderful masters who help support this endeavor either by joining us on Patreon or by hitting that join button right beside the sub button to join as a member of the channel. So I would like to thank this month's Masters of Masters, Izevi, Elizabeth Just Elizabeth, Jeremy P, Asaki VT, Jake Ryan 23, Matt 87 Eagle, Shiorans, Stephen G, and Tristan G. Thank you all so much for being especially generous this month. I sincerely appreciate it. A huge thank you once again goes to our masters, and as a reminder, if you would like to join our masters, then be sure to check out that first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, or you can check out the join button right beside the sub button to join as a member of the channel and get a nifty badge next to your name. Either way, it is sincerely appreciated. And with that said, it is time for me to end today's video, but before we go, as always, clean your room. It's filthy.